Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
For artists that want to follow a realistic style, I don't know that you necessarily have to overthink about an influence like me or any other painter who does realism. You can certainly get a lot from the pieces that we've done, maybe even imitate some of those compositions, but I think you'll find your own way once you're just studying reality, which is what I would do. I mean, if I'm going to look at people, things, photographs, it's beneficial to start shooting your own if you can get into that. And these days, since everybody's got a camera, that's not so much of an issue anymore. Being able to study life as the basis for something is the best. I had the longest problem of thinking I needed to have everybody and every element be perfect before I could use it as a reference source. And so it took me a long time to realize how flexible the basis of the human form is. I've posed for myself on loads of paintings where now I guess I'm called out by some people online. It's a process of getting your mind comfortable with what you're building off of. And at a certain point, I would say accept that you're going to feel like you're not seeing it until you've seen it. You know, that maybe you do need to have a thing look like a thing exactly before you're painting from it.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It's time again for another Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Happy to welcome Ryland Grant back to Word Balloon. As you can see under his name there, his credits, among them Banjax, Apparent, and his current Kickstarter. He's working on his second issue of, there it is, The Jump. Stand by, right? Pushing in. There we go.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah. Isn't it pretty?
No, it looks great. Very excited. Interesting concept. And I will allow you first to give a bit of the 10-cent tour, but I'm ready to show your Kickstarter video as well.
Oh, so, yeah, the elevator pitch. Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and show the Kickstarter video, because otherwise I'll just repeat a bunch of stuff that's in the Kickstarter video and look like a jackass. So let's...
No, absolutely, man.
Play it out. Yeah.
All right, I want to share audio. There we go. So, boom. All right, everybody, here we go. Stand by. This is Ryland's video for The Jump, issues 1 and 2.
We pause there? Looks like we paused there.
Projects with folks like J.J. Abrams, Ridley Scott, Luc Besson, John Woo, and Justin Lin. I swerved into the comic book lane a few years back. You might know my first book, Aberrant, which was published by Action Lab Danger Zone in 2019. It won a Ringo Award for Best Villain and was nominated for 2 others, including Best Writer and Best Single Issue. You may also know my last book, Banjax, which made over a dozen critics' 10 best lists last year. It was nominated for 4 Ringo Awards, including Best Series, but that stuff is old news. I am here today to talk to you about what's new and what is exciting, my latest and greatest, and that is The Jump. It is a kick-you-in-the-teeth paranoid thriller set in the world of astral projection. Issue 1 was brought to life right here on Kickstarter by you, and we are back today with a face-melting Issue 2. It is badass. It is bonkers. You're going to love it. Take a look.
After a series of crippling personal tragedies, our protagonist Thomas retreats from his everyday life and finds comfort in an online community dedicated to the art of astral projection. When he demonstrates a unique aptitude for the practice, Thomas becomes the target of a mysterious corporate political machine known as Ajax, bent on using promising young practitioners to win a centuries-old war on the astral plane.
Now, The Jump is a smart, grounded, high-concept sci-fi thriller full of meaty twists and turns. It is Inception meets The Bourne Identity if it were dripping with macabre, and directed by David Fincher. Now tell me that doesn't sound amazing. The art is done. The book is completely ready to go. We just need the funds now to print it up and get it to you. Any additional cash will be put towards art for issues 3 and 4 and beyond. This is going to be an ongoing series. You're going to love it for years to come. We have great rewards for potential backers, 3 amazing variant covers, original art, the chance to actually appear in the book or on a cover, the chance to come on the film and TV property as a producer, and there is tons of great stuff for all you process junkies. So take a look below, pick a tier you like, and please, please, please come make the jump with us, huh?
Okay, there we go. Sorry about the echo, everybody. We'll fix that in post for the audio. But no, that's cool, man. Excellent. And I like the idea of tying astral projection into this conspiracy suspense story. Tell me about what inspired this wrinkle of The Jump.
Yeah, that's a good question because my artist Fabio Elvez, we did Banjax together a couple of years back, and Banjax is a dark superhero noir kind of Death Wish with a superhero. Probably my favorite thing that I've written. So if you haven't checked it out, go check that out.
I would say it's my favorite thing you've written as well. Absolutely.
Oh, well, thanks. What was I going to say? But yeah, so we wrapped that up, and it was nominated for 4 Ringo Awards, nominated for Best Series alongside Something's Killing the Children and Bitter Root. So nothing wrong with that. But Fabio was nominated for Best Cover Artist also. And so when you have an artist like that, on the line, you want to keep them working, right? You don't want to lose them to somebody else. And so as Banjax was wrapping up, I was trying to get him on the next thing immediately. And, I had probably 10 things in the holster, like any writer, that I could have handed off to him and said, hey, draw this. And he would have been fine with it. But, I think the best thing you could do for an artist, certainly, but, the best thing you could do for yourself, really, is when you have an artist like Fabio, go to them and say, hey, what do you want to draw? And, that's the best way to keep an artist like excited and engaged and just giving you incredible art. And I've done that with other artists, and usually there's hemming and hawing, and you get like, well, I don't know, dragon might be nice or something like that, and you kind of take that with a grain of salt. But man, Fabio had this one in the holster. He was just like, I want to do something like this. And he didn't have the concept, he didn't have the series, he didn't have whatever, but what he did have is this world. And so, as I sort of said in that pitch video, this takes place in this world. There's this online world of astral projectors, right? That our protagonist kind of gets pulled into, and then intrigue ensues, right? The fact is that this online world of astral projectors, it actually exists in our world.
Wow.
And Fabio, my artist, is a member of this online world. And so again, he didn't have the story, he didn't have anything like that, but he's like, look, I've been doing this for a decade plus, and this is a huge part of my life. This is my spiritual life, and that connected with me because I'm an ordained Soto Zen Buddhist monk, and what I came to find is that basically these people they're wrestling with the same big existential questions that we are when we're sitting in a Zendo or whatever. And that was one of the things that pulled me in. But really what it was this world. So Fabio took me by the hand and took me into this world and introduced me to people who have been doing this for years, and people who teach this stuff, and people who guide other folks through it. And they made me do it, and they made me do this and that and the other thing. And I just kind of fell in love, and that's how the best stories I've ever told, whether they're on a film, a film screen, on a TV screen, in a comic book, they always start out that way. I'm not a guy who, I want something you can't Google. If I'm going to write a story, I don't I don't go and look at a Wikipedia page and then just start inventing shit. I want to go into the world. You and I were talking a little bit off screen and before this thing started, and one of the scripts that broke me was this. It was kind of a Lethal Weapon type action thriller. One of the scripts that broke me in Hollywood was called The Ghost and the Wolf, and it's about this kind of gang war between Armenian and Russian gangsters. And again, I didn't read a book. I didn't go and do a Google search and steal some stuff. I had friends of friends, and they introduced me to a guy that ran a Russian contraband house, and a guy that an Armenian bookie. And I went and spent weeks with these guys, drinking with these guys and hanging out in clubs with these guys, and then those guys introduced me to other guys and other gals, and I learned how it all worked, and I learned how they talked, and I watched how they stood and how they carried themselves and how they butted heads and how they played fucking cards and all of that stuff. And all of that went into the scripts, right? And so it was like, when people read this, they're like, oh, wow, this feels different. Hey, Aaron Nabus, good to see you, man. Thanks for joining us. And so it was a similar thing with The Jump, where it was like, and this is a world, this world of astral projectors is just something that you cannot remotely conceive of, right? You could, you or I could, in a vacuum, write a story about Russian gangsters because we've seen, we've seen Eastern Promises or The Godfather or something like that. And
yeah,
actually, my Russian script was written like years before Eastern Promises, so take that into. But this world of astral projection is not something that you could remotely wrap your mind around. You could not make this up. Yeah. And so if I didn't go in, I wouldn't have been able to really write this or write it authentically or write it in an interesting way. And so when I fell in love with this world and fell in love with the people in this world, it really became a matter of, okay, now what story do I set in this world? Because again, Fabio didn't come with any of that. And, I have for about 16 years, I've been, paid to write in Hollywood. I haven't had to do anything else. That's been my day job for God, almost as long as I can remember now. And I get paid to write mostly big poppy action movies, and I've written any number of paranoid thrillers for folks like J.J. Abrams and Justin Lin and John Woo and Ridley Scott, and so I have never seen a movie like that set in a world like this, and I thought that was a really kind of killer combination. And so, yeah, it started to unfold. We kind of got our first act with issue 1 that, we kickstarted that in June of last year. Raised about $15,000 on one issue, and it was a big critical hit and all that stuff. And we're back with issue 2, and we're cruising. And yeah, issue 2 is really interesting because it was like, we kind of got this. Issue 1, we get to know the world, the characters. It is a big like plot punch in the face, and then with issue 2 we really go into the psychology of all of it, and we really start to explore what is possible in this world. It's just a lot of fun, and that's what it's the BD of comics, it's like if you write a movie, you're trying to get from beginning to end as quickly as possible, right? You only have so much time. And so you're kind of a slave to plot a lot of the time. Of course you want your good character development, but there's not so much time for it. But the beauty with a comic book, you have these stanzas, right? And so if I want to, with issue 2, just be like, okay, what this one's, we're simply going to get into the psychology of the main character this time. It's like, rather than having to move everything like a mile, we're going to move it a couple of inches here, and it's going to be fucking riveting, Yeah. I think you're muted, John.
There we go. Sorry about that.
Cool.
I just want to make sure we weren't having the echo issue that we had earlier too.
Yeah.
It sounds great, and I want to show a panel right now that you've got on the Kickstarter page, and it was in the video as well. And that's right there. The the astral plane itself. And I like the idea and the concept, and I imagine maybe this is true as well, based on the guy's kind of not in as far as in the real world, not in the best shape. It seems his astral projection is really this highly idealized version of himself. I could see that being incredibly seductive from a psychological standpoint as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of that is the that's dealt with heavily in the first two issues, particularly in the second issue. And yeah, I mean, you hit it right on the head. I mean, you picked right up on it. And the funny thing about it is, every artist needs references, right? They're drawing a character. Sometimes it's just a facial expression reference or a pose or whatever. And Fabio is really reference heavy when he draws, and he started to kind of play with this thing, and he's like, I'm looking, but I can't find the references that I want. And so he just went ahead and he made the main character himself. And so if you look at a picture of Fabio and you look at the main character, it's him,
That's great.
And it's really good. And the funny thing is, like, you hit it right on the head. I mean, Fabio is more like the character in the real world. I mean, he spends all, he was in shape at one point in his life, but he spends all day sitting behind a table drawing now, and he's not in the best shape. And and then you see the guy on the cover, and he has a six pack, and he has this. And so
I said that as a straight man, but he's got a kind of like Arnold at the beginning of the Terminator, the first Terminator.
He's cut from granite. I mean, 100%. And that's interesting. And what you find is that when you are skilled, you can be anything you want to be, right? But the idea that and look, here's the thing: is like just when we dream, we are kind of idealized versions of ourselves. If we just daydream, right? We're much handsomer than we are, and we're in better shape, and we say the right thing all the time, and that's really what this is about. And I try to ground it in reality and in the actual human experience. And so this is a heightened kind of blown up version of just what we do in our heads, like, every day, right? If we have 5 minutes to ourselves, where does our mind go, right? But what if you could swing a bigger sword with that, right?
Sure.
And so that's what I love about this thing, is that it's really about, again, we are, like I said, like from a Zen perspective, wrestling with big existential questions, but it's also just kind of exploring the human condition and the human experience in kind of a fun, heightened, interesting way. And I think that's always the best sci-fi. That's always the best,
Absolutely. And I think people are used to, certainly comic book fans, and now even Marvel movie fans are used to the idea of astral projecting with Doctor Strange. I think they handled it in a really good way in the films. And I also think, I'm looking forward to the sequel, the next Doctor Strange movie.
Yeah.
This looks cool. I want to get Ed's question in, which is about Aberrant. Am I saying Aberrant correctly?
Aberrant. Yeah.
Aberrant. Okay, big deal. Ed wanted to know, are we going to get a deluxe hardcover presentation of it? And is there any news on it being a TV adaptation?
I would love to do a deluxe hardcover. It's okay. So both of those questions get complicated because if it was because a lot of the rights with Aberrant in terms of the printing are tied up with Action Lab right now.
Okay.
And Action Lab has hit the skids a little bit with everything COVID. And so I don't know where that is. It was a big hit for them. It was nominated for 2 Ringo Awards, won another one. You don't get a lot of that over there. It was well received. I mean, here's the thing: is that if and when the TV show becomes a reality, I don't think there's going to be a question. I think they're gonna sell it any and every way they can. And so I would love to do it. It'll be weird navigating the waters with them for the next, I don't know. I don't know where they're headed, so it's complicated, and so that's in stasis right now. The TV adaptation is it's not much different in terms of the way the story the story goes. Things got really complicated with COVID. It was with comics, it was pencils down everywhere. Well, with Hollywood, like, nothing got made for about a year. I mean, other than this weird film that I somehow got shot in Italy, which we could talk about in a little bit.
Absolutely.
But,
Yeah.
yeah, but particularly big TV productions and everything. And Aberrant is such a big production that became really complicated. And first of all, most of Hollywood was shut down, but stuff that was getting made was very small. It was very manageable. Animated stuff saw a big boom and stuff like that. So there was a long pause hit on it. That said, conversations have started back up. It is because of that, it is now second in line for me. I actually have a different TV thing with Lionsgate and with Daveed Diggs, who's one of the stars of Hamilton, and Emmy Raver Latman, who's one of the stars of Umbrella Academy, and that is kind of on the 2-yard line, and so that is going to go before ever and ever does. But
hey, congratulations, that's great. And is that the guy that is currently complaining that didn't get a chance to audition for Krypton? Diggs, I don't know if he is or not.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't hear that. I mean, he has more work than he can handle right now. I can't see that.
Is he in that Bridgerton? Was he in Bridgerton the first season?
No. He's not the Bridgerton guy. No, he's actually, yeah. I mean, his day job right now is he is the lead in the Snowpiercer TV series.
Oh wow, great.
Yeah, but he's also in every commercial, and he's in every every time there's like a break on an NBA game, he's in something. But yeah, he's that guy's not hurting right now. So
okay, yeah. Well, Turner certainly promotes the hell out of Snowpiercer, and good. It's a fun show. I haven't really sunk into it deeply to really absorb everything, but I do appreciate the concept. And my friends who watch it are really hooked, and that's a cool show. So
and I wonder what his superhero break is going to be, because it's coming. I mean, in the next 2 years, you're going to see an announcement. Like, mark my words here. I'm calling my shot right now, and I'm wondering what it's going to be, because he's fucking great. He's dynamic. I mean, this TV series we're doing with him too is going to make him an action star. It's kind of it is a very high concept kind of twist on the Count of Monte Cristo, and it's it's almost like the Count of Monte Cristo set in a John Wickian world, and so it's I mean, he's gonna a lot of physicality and a lot of badassery, and it's gonna be awesome for him. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see where Marvel puts him. It's coming.
I hear you. No, that's hilarious. No,
yeah.
I understand. Yeah. I have that. I mean, and it's so easy to say this now, but when Tom Ellis was first on the scene with Lucifer, I'm like, and I keep telling Joe Henderson, I'm like, man, with Tom, and I'm like, I want you to have him as long as you can, and for the show to go as long as it is. I'm like, that guy is the next Benedict Cumberbatch, in my opinion, Tom Ellis.
Yeah.
And he's so multi-talented that, I'm sure opportunities await him as well. Tell me about this movie. I mean, we'll come back to the jump and talk about some of the like the alternative covers and great things like that. But yeah, tell me about this movie that luckily during COVID you actually did manage to get it made.
Yeah, it's called State of Consciousness. It's a high concept sci-fi mindfuck, which made a lot of my bones over the years writing high concept sci-fi mindfucks. And so starting Emile Hirsch, we somehow got it shot like in the middle of COVID in Italy, when Italy was kind of COVID central. I mean, all that said, it was northern Italy that was kind of crazy. This was shot in Rome, so a little bit different, but it was not. And actually, they shot about half of it in Guatemala, also.
Wow.
Underneath an active volcano. So if you go on Emile Hirsch's Instagram site, you'll see the videos where it's like he steps out of his trailer and puts his camera on the active volcano that's basically directly over his trailer. Smoke coming out, and at night you can see lava bubbling out. It's going to be a couple of months back, but yeah. So yeah, and it looks like being edited now, and it looks like it's going to premiere at the Venice Film Festival in October. So but a lot of fun. And it's exciting to get done. And I mean, the bitch about it is that we didn't. I mean, I was supposed to be out there for all of it. I was supposed to have this all expense paid trip to Italy to see my movie get made, and didn't work out that way because of COVID. We were actually, we were supposed to go and do a bunch of work there before the movie actually got started. We were supposed to do a lot of writing out there, and then that couldn't happen. And so, it was literally like this was in February. So we had our plane arrangements, we had our hotel lined up, and we were about to get on a plane, and just kind of decided to hit the pause button. And then a few days later, they're like, international travel's locked down. So basically, if we would have gone, we probably would have been stuck in Italy for a couple of months. So that could have been pretty ugly and perilous. But
I could bring up his Instagram, and it's. I don't feel bad doing that because obviously they're all public photos, so it's okay. Yeah. Hold on one second.
He's a public. Did you find it?
Yeah, well, I haven't. I don't know. That's why I'm hoping you'll identify the.
Okay. Yeah, I could probably find it and send you a link. If we would have, let me see.
Okay, because I can go to his page too and share the page. And...
Yeah. Well, I might be able to just eyeball it and send you a link over the thing or something like that. But
and congrats getting Emil Hirsch involved. Good actor and everything, and obviously a guy that as he's getting older and stuff, I think that's cool that he's doing this stuff as he's come a long way from The Girl Next Door or whatever that movie he made back in the early 2000s with
he was
Burke and Birth and everything.
Yeah, he was coming off a Tarantino movie, when we so there's let me find the Volcano one.
Sure. No problem. We'll fill the void.
Yeah. Where is the Volcano one? There's a bunch of him on set here, and there's a bunch of him with the stunt coordinator.
Oh, that's cool.
Let me see. Is this it? Sorry.
Oh, not a problem, man. I'll and like I said, I'm happy to share the Instagram page, and if you see the photo, we can stop and
Yeah. Is this it here? There. Yeah, here it is. All right.
Oh, great.
Let me.
Okay.
Let me show it to you. I got it.
Great. Well, and so
Great radio. All right, here you go. Okay. I just sent it over to you. Yeah.
Right. Hold on.
It was it starts out blurry, so that was why it was hard to find. But
is this the video? Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
All right, let me share. That's great. Beautiful, man. No, it's worth the wait. Hold on a second.
It's pretty funny.
So let's.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, here we go. There it is, and there it is. There's the Volcano. Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Wow, that's amazing. Is it showing? Yes, there it is. Okay.
Yeah. Show it. And so, obviously we were watching everybody that was there for the production the whole time, and at night you can actually see like kind of you can see like orange lava kind of bubbling up on the top of it and stuff like that.
Wow.
But they were shooting like right under this thing for most of the time. They were in Guatemala, and everybody was just you sort of forget about it, and then you kind of catch it out of the corner of your eye, and it's just up there. So yeah, pretty funny. Guatemala is quite the adventure to shoot in. There aren't a lot of people that shoot there. It's kind of becoming more and more popular, and obviously in the age of COVID, you kind of have to get creative with how you're spending your money and where people are allowing you to do what and all that stuff. But
totally,
I got shot.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm saying it got shot and it's in the can and it's being edited, and so it's more than a minor miracle, So
does it get sent to you in the West Coast for post, or is it being made in post in Guatemala or Italy?
No, the director's here, and so we had to find an editor that spoke both fluent English and Italian. So post is being done here with the director, and then a lot of producers in Italy who are kind of weighing in on it and all that stuff. And
boy, not only COVID, but Ed has a good question. Did it impact the air quality of the Volcano?
Oh yeah, I'm sure it did.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, absolutely. You gotta be everybody. I don't know if they got hazard pay or not. It was in Guatemala, but they deserved it. But yeah, it's film. The film business takes you into some weird places.
Sure. I want to go back to the Kickstarter page and not only show the cover. There's great preview art as well, so you get a sense of the story if people go to the Kickstarter page.
Yeah.
You've got about just under 2 weeks left for the Kickstarter. You've reached your goal, but obviously now it's time for stretch goals. So
yeah.
I'm going to bring that up in a second. 1 second here. Where the hell am I? Let's see here. Let's stop the screen. Very good. And then I'll share again. So you'll forgive me, everybody. It is Sunday, and I'm like kind of, in slow motion right now. So I apologize. But yeah, here we go. Okay, boom. So yeah, there's the big cover and everything, and it's that I assume that's the standard cover, and the variants are hilarious. We all can appreciate the inspiration for this cover in particular.
Yeah, well, and one of our cooler tiers is we have this "Put Me on a Cover" tier, and so we can actually make you Marty McFly or make you Boba Fett, or make you Thomas Magnum.
Sure.
And there are two versions of that tier, so we can do it, and we can send you a digital file that you can do anything you want with. And we had a guy last go around. We do this on every campaign, who had it printed to like a 24 by 36 poster, and hung it up in his man cave, and it was glorious. But we found a way last time to affordably actually put you on a physical copy of the book. And so if you back that tier, you not only get the regular books, but you get 2 copies of the book with you on it. And so that's kind of crazy as like a film fan. I mean, I don't have one with me on it. It was the biggest mistake I ever made, is that the first go around, I didn't do one with me on it. And I'm totally going to do it this go around. But the cool thing about the Back to the Future cover is that it's the first one we've done that has 2 people on it, right? Easily. And so we always take cues from our backers. Our backers are the ones who are like, hey, we love this digital cover tier, but it would be awesome if you could give us a physical comic book with us on it. And I'm like, okay, now I have to do this. And so I spend a week like figuring out how to do that affordably. But with this one, they're like, I see there are 2 people on here. It's like, could you make the woman my wife also? And so we had a couple of people chime in with and so we're putting couples on the Back to the Future cover now. And so if you and your significant other want to appear together as Doc and Marty, we will oblige.
That's a great idea. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ryland, do you have Kickstarter gurus? Is this your 3rd project Kickstarter? How many Kickstarters have you done?
Yeah, this is our 3rd one, and our 3rd one since July of last year, or June of last year, I guess. Yeah, I mean, what happened, man, was so for like 2 years, the Kickstarter kind of bigwigs were encouraging me to come over. They were preaching, basically there are 2 audiences. There are 2 comic audiences. There's this audience that they kind of specifically buy their books in a comic shop, and then there is this whole other audience that pretty much exclusively buys on Kickstarter. And there is crossover, of course, but not nearly as much as you think. And so the more you kind of mess with it, the more you realize that if you're not kind of catering to both audiences, you are doing yourself as a creator, and you're doing your book, your title, a disservice. And so, but it seemed like such, running a Kickstarter is like making a movie. I mean, it's just such an undertaking. It's so much work, so much promo. And so, I like to be like in a cave writing, right? Sure. I don't want to deal with all the other crap.
Yeah.
But what happened was, so pre-COVID, I had 2 books that were, set to be published by big publishers. They were going to be announced. They were going into previews, the whole 9 yards, and then COVID hit. It was pencils down everywhere, and then people started getting fired, right?
Yeah.
And I had a and I won't name names and companies and whatnot, but I had a book that was literally it was going to be solicited. The stuff was going into previews in like 4 days. And I was in this rhythm of communicating with like 3 different people there, like every day for the better part of a couple of weeks. And then the shit hit the fan, and overnight I didn't have an email address that worked at the company anymore. Everybody got fired.
Wow.
And so And so it took it took 3 or 4 months to work things out with that company. It turned out that it wasn't going to work with them. And then trying to find homes for these books after that became this big, because everybody's most companies are scheduled, out until 2022 anyway.
Yep.
But then also comic shops are closed. Nobody's going to them. All of this stuff. And so it was a clusterfuck. And that specific book that I was talking about just got back on track. It's going to be in previews. It's going to be in preview, different company, but it's going to be in previews in June, and it's going to hit a issue one will hit a comic shop in July. But long-winded way of saying, I have 4 or 5 titles in the pipe right now, and suddenly I had nowhere to take these things, right? And I see people kind of going crazy on Kickstarter. And so finally these friends of mine were able to kind of push me over the edge. They're just like, dude, you're missing out. Like, you have all these people with disposable income sitting at home. Like, Kickstarter hit this bottom where it was like they had fewer comic projects on the site than ever before. Literally ever before. Yeah, because people were terrified to actually launch their they didn't know how people were going to react to all this COVID stuff. So nobody was launching anything. But the data coming back from Kickstarter was, look, we have as many backers as ever. They're not going anywhere, and they want stuff. So
Yeah.
so they put out an APB, and they're like, please bring us stuff. And my friends are like, look, if you're ever going to do it, it's now. And so we launched Jump One then. That was back in June, and it was a big success. And what I loved is that the community there is just amazing. It's like the fans there. I had been putting books out in comic shops for a while, and it's great, but it can be kind of like screaming into the Grand Canyon. It's like you hear a little bit back on Twitter. You meet people at cons. Obviously, I don't do as many cons as some people do, because I have a 4-year-old. I can't travel. I have this film TV thing going on. This is almost a hobby to a certain degree. But man, the audience is just so vibrant and so engaged there. And it's like you do something wrong, you hear immediately. You just do something right, they throw you a party. And it was just like, it was this unique, amazing way to kind of interact with an audience, and to make something special. We don't just release floppies on Kickstarter. We create this experience where we try to include the backers, the readers, as much as possible. We get them into the book as many ways as we can. And I just kind of fell in love with it, and so, yeah, we did, I was on the show, what was it? 4 months back.
Yeah. In October, or that was more than 4 months. If you meant my show. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that, with the Peacekeepers, which was my kind of a passion project, my Fargo-esque crime drama.
Yeah.
We kickstarted chapters 1 and 2 of that, and and that was a success. And so and people were demanding more Jump, and so we got issue 2 done, and we're back with issue 2 now. And so yeah, it's realistically, you can do 3 or 4 of these a year. You can't do the next one until you fulfill the one before that.
Sure.
And depending on how busy I get with TV here, in the next year, we'll see. But if I can keep doing them, then I'll do them, because it's I don't know, just a great experience.
That's cool. Oh, I'm so glad Comics Misexplained mentioned your podcast. I did want to ask about that, and that is the Writer's Block podcast. Now, do not feel obligated. He's like, I hope to see John on the Writer's Block podcast. While I have many writer ambitions, I would not presume to put myself in your circle to talk as a writer in anything. So, and he says, just swinging by, looking forward to listening to your work tomorrow. Oh, that's great, man. Well, you're going to enjoy the conversation when you hear it. So that's fantastic. But yeah, tell me about Writer's Block, which I know started around the time, I believe, on one of the mainframe. If it wasn't the August mainframe, it was maybe during Baltimore that you guys started.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No. It was. It was at Baltimore. It was mainframe content, and in fact, we our video component. We release on iTunes and Spotify and everywhere else that everywhere else they sort of pedal fine ear crack. But our video component is on both the Comic Core YouTube channel and the mainframe YouTube channel. So very much part of that family. But yeah, we did it at first, at Baltimore Comic Con, and we had that was the I think what was that issue one, or you know what, you're getting me on my history here. I was looking at it today. We eventually did Baltimore Comic Con, but I think we started at Mainframe. I think our first our first episode was at the second Mainframe Comic Con, the second big one, and we had David F. Walker from Bitterroot and Erica Schultz on, and doing kind of like a comic, State of the Union. It was like, the shit had hit the fan, and it was like, how are you dealing? And that's what it started. And really, it started from, for a while, this was another thing of like someone pestering me to do something for a long time and me finally giving in. And Chad, from Mainframe, from Comic Core, had been on me for a while being like, dude, you should do a show. You should, because I helped out with the, with those Mainframe Comic Cons as much as I could. And my skill set was always, okay, well, I'm friends with all these creators, so let me just bring them on, and we'll get on and we'll put panels together and talk about shit, and we'll how-tos and all that stuff, and it was good content. And I had just been, I had spent years on the con circuit, doing how-to panels and Kickstarter panels and all of these things, and it was always entertaining. It was always a party. It was awesome. Suddenly there are no cons, and so where do we take that stuff? And so the beauty of the Mainframe Comic Con was, okay, we can now put our panels on again. We used to get together and put on these panels, and they were wonderful, and they inspired people to make books, and that was where I learned to make books, and how I was inspired to make books was sitting in those panels years ago. And so I'm on this mission to kind of give back, and so Mainframe took care of that aspect. I was sitting around talking with my co-host David Avalone, who writes Drawing Blood with Kevin Eastman, and does a bunch of stuff for Dynamite. Elvira, he's kind of he is Elvira's writing arm, and they just did this. They did a Kickstarter mid-COVID and raised $160,000 or something like that. It was crazy.
Yeah, that's great. Wonderful.
Yeah, but Elvira brings in the people.
It's like Berserker with Keanu Reeves and everything over at Boom. Yeah, mini version of that, because I think Keanu raised $2.2 million or something like that. But Elvira definitely makes bank. 6 figures, nothing to sneeze at. That's wonderful.
No, sign me up. Yeah, and so there's that, and so but Avalone and I are okay. Like, well, what are we missing? Okay, so we have our cons back in a way. But there's this thing that a lot of people call BarCon. But BarCon, it's sort of a, you get imagery of drunkards and, ass grabbers and awful stuff like that.
Oh,
but
you're right. It's really gotten a bad name.
It's gotten a bad name.
Really, you're right. But it really is a great convention tradition. Continue. And not that stuff, the good stuff with BarCon. Go on.
Yeah, well, the name aside, what we missed was, again, you can see in our panels, and you can see when we're on Mainframe and all the stuff that we're friends, we're brothers and sisters. It's this family of creators, and what happens is after a long day on the con floor, we all get together and we go across the street to the the bar across the street, or the Bennigan's across the street, or whatever it is, wherever the hell you are. And we just hang out and we just talk shop for a couple of hours. And, it starts out usually with like the issue of the day, what happened at the con, or Marvel's, Marvel just left Diamond. Let's talk about that. But then at some point it ends up degenerating into us arguing over who's the best Star Trek captain, or, which was the worst Karate Kid movie, or something like that. And it ends in a fist fight. And so we were missing that. There was nowhere to do that, and so we recreated this in podcast form. And so every week, Avalone and I kind of pull in some of our kind of bigwig and non-bigwig comic creator friends, and we just sit around and just shoot the shit. And it starts out again with kind of a comic topic. Sometimes it's State of the Union, sometimes it's let's talk lettering, let's talk, let's get a couple of colorists on and have them tell us what, why they hate working with writers and all of that stuff. And then of course it just ends up to us with us kind of shooting the shit and talking this or talking that. And it's beautiful and it's wondrous. And we've had great guests. We had Kevin Eastman on, and we had Matt Fraction and Stan Sakai on, and and David F. Walker, like I said, and Alex DeCampi and John Layman, and it's just kind of one fun creator after another, and we have a great time. And yes, John, we would we have done comics journalism episodes, and we would love to have you on, because I'm sure you can tell some amazing war stories. And I believe that you and Avalone are I mean, you are historians of different things, but you are both kind of you have this encyclopedic knowledge of these different kind of corners of pop culture and sports. And I believe that you guys would fall in love with each other on Zoom. So
let David know, honestly, and I really want to talk to David at some point on Word Balloon, not only about his work but also about his father, because inadvertently I've read several of his dad's paperbacks over the years. And and especially the ones that were tie-ins to TV stuff and things like that. So it's kind of crazy. And I think I'm correct. Didn't his dad write a Partridge Family TV tie-in, I believe?
I think so. You know what? It's something. I mean, you can never get it. You can never get it all, because it's so much. I mean, his
the guy was ridiculously prolific. Absolutely. Well, the funny thing is, my older sister, being a Partridge Family fan, when the show was brand new, had the paperback. And I remember seeing, I believe, when I looked up David's dad, I'm like, oh my God, my sister had that book. And I know I read that book, because it's just a great shot of Susan Day and Laurie Partridge, like a harpsichord or some sort of organ or whatever. And I'm just like, that's amazing. But also, no, honestly, I would like to talk to David at some point. So thank you. That's very nice to offer both on your show. But let him know that he's on the radar. It's, I mean, a lot of times I will say, hey, you got to come on Word Balloon. And then suddenly I look up and it's like, oh my God, I asked somebody that literally 2 years ago or whatever. I feel
I do the same thing. I'm at a con, or I bump into somebody and I'm just like, hey, you need to come on the podcast. You need to, and then I forget about it. And then usually I'm scrolling through Twitter and I see it actually happened. It happened this last week. We had Norm Harper on, who's an Eisner nominated creator of, he does kind of YA and comics for kids, and great guy, one of my favorite con hangs. And it just occurred to me, oh my God, I haven't had Norm on yet. Norm is, again, if I'm at a con, I got to find Norm. I got to hang out with Norm. And so we finally, after 25 episodes or whatever, had him on this last week. And that was funny. So I'm doing that all the time. But I'm sure Avalone's always looking for a good conversation. And he loves talking about his dad's book. I mean, for those who don't know, Michael Avalone, he wrote over 250 novels, was just insanely prolific. And it's all across the board. I mean, some of them are, he did this Ed Noon series, which is kind of this pulpy, private eye story. But then he wrote Partridge Family novels. He wrote the film novelization of Friday the 13th Part 3. And so it's it's the beauty of our show is that Avalone has a million of these stories. So it's you never know what you're going to get. So it's you're so my dad was writing, this crazy thing. He was writing the Pee Wee Herman novel and blah, blah. And I'm like, wait, your dad wrote the Pee Wee Herman novel? And he's like, oh yeah. And then Avalone could talk for 20 minutes about his dad writing the Pee Wee Herman novel. But also it's you're talking to a writer who grew up with this insanely prolific writer as a dad. And this guy who would disappear into the study for 8 hours a day and come out with these typed pages, and then a couple of months later you'd have it in a paperback form, and it's funny because Avalone, his father's since passed, and Avalone now owns the entire catalog, and that's a big part of his life, managing that, and people calling him for film rights, and Avalone has this. Yeah, Avalone has this other podcast he does too, but he does this thing called Pulp Today, where he reads an excerpt from an old pulp novel every time, and then kind of discusses it and ties it in historically.
Oh, wow.
Usually,
that's great.
Usually he has a guest on, and I'm coming on soon to talk some Elmore Leonard.
Outstanding.
And, so.
No,
that's good. Check that out too.
Yeah. And like you said, him and his father, it's kind of like Joe Hill and Stephen King, obviously. That's really great. And
it's in the blood.
Yeah, exactly. It's in the blood, 100%, man. No, that's really cool. So, again, you've had this great success with Kickstarter. Are you considering other non-comic store platforms? Again, I've been having this conversation really for over a year now, and you got guys like Brubaker that went to Marcos Martin and was able to put his stuff on Panel Syndicate, and I know Alex DeCampi, who you mentioned earlier, she's done that as well. So are you looking at the other platforms as well as Kickstarter as far as where to put your stuff?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, and it's and it's a complex one. I mean it's I think that I think comics is at this crossroads. I mean comics is kind of where music was when Napster hit hit the world.
Comparison, absolutely, yes indeed.
Yeah, and so things are fracturing like crazy, and who knows what comics are going to look like in 5 years or 10 years, or even 2 years. Who knows?
I was going to say even next year. Yeah. God only knows. I mean, really, and especially the big two, like you mentioned earlier, Marvel movie The Penguin, and what DC's doing with distribution as well. No, I really do think the entire industry is kind of holding its breath and seeing how things go. And thankfully, like you mentioned earlier too. During the COVID year, thankfully, I think for everybody, we all wanted stories. So everyone was buying a lot more, I think, than normal, which is great because so many other businesses receded. And again, I mentioned, I'm in broadcasting and stuff. And all of a sudden I was like, hey, really sorry, but the advertising money's there. We got to downsize.
Did I freeze up or did you freeze up? John is still frozen. Hi guys, I don't know if I'm live or if are you there, John? I'm gonna chat with John. Yeah, I think John just got kicked off. I am alone in the broadcast, I believe. I think I'm still live, and I think I'm still well, I don't see John. And I don't know if there are still people watching. If there's still people watching, you guys can type questions and I'll answer. Okay, there's John.
So sorry, everybody. I'm on my backup computer, and the internet connection gets funky every now and then. So yeah, I'm back. I promise. So everything's.
Yeah. No worries. It was funny. I didn't know if I was frozen or you were frozen. I didn't know if I was still on. So.
And I should have even warned you prior to the broadcast that if for whatever reason I get knocked out, you could take over. Well, now you're in good company because Mark Waid was faced with that situation at some point this summer. So thank you for continuing.
Hopefully, hopefully Mark handled it better than I did. But yeah, I mean, it's just such an interesting question. And here's the thing: is I'm trying to figure it out, and I think all of us are trying to figure it out. I mean, here's the deal: is that with a few exceptions, like you as a creator, you don't make money putting books in comic shops, right? I don't want to get down on comic shops, and comic shops will never go away. I mean, there are these community centers that bring us all together, and they're beautiful. And comics are not just they're not just reading material; they're also like a collectible, right? They're it's almost like a baseball card, also.
Right.
Yeah, and so there's that very important part of it. But just in terms of, I mean, for us, it's like, again, if I, God, yeah, I mean, if I publish with Image, I'll make a little bit of money, right?
Sure.
However, you'll make money on the first issue, but then there's attrition, right? You can go to Jim Zub's website, and I mean, he's done these amazing write-ups on the attrition that you experience releasing a book.
Yep.
And at some point, it just doesn't become profitable to do anymore. However, I can go to Kickstarter and I can put a single issue up and I can make, $15,000 on it. Or, again, David Pepos had, you never know which one is just going to go into the stratosphere. David Pepos put the OZ on there, and he was terrified that he was not going to make his. I'm telling him, set a $9,000 goal. And he's like, nah, I don't think I'm going to make that. I'm like, okay, set a 7. He's like, nah, I don't think I'm going to make that. He sets it at 6, and then he ends up with $48,000 on a single issue.
That's great. That's great.
And and not all of that is profit. That goes to artists and that goes to printing and stuff like that. But David Pepos made more money on a single issue of the OZ than he's probably made in his entire career as a comic book writer. David Pepos had for the longest time had a day job as a comics reviewer. And I'm lucky that my day job is, writing movies and television shows, and this comic thing doesn't have to support me. It's really hard, and so that is a huge factor. The other factor is that you're going to have a very hard time finding a publisher who is not going to demand a huge portion of the film rights, the TV rights, who's going to give you an equitable split. And that's not, they're not sharks. Some of them are, but most of them aren't. Most of them, they have overhead. They have editors that they have to pay, and they have huge printing costs, and they have an office building to pay for, and all of this stuff, and they're barely squeaking by, right? And Diamond takes a huge percentage of what they're doing, and so that becomes a big part of it. And so if I go to Kickstarter, then I keep all my film and TV rights, and that's huge for me because I'm my business for the last 8 years has been generating IP and setting up in Hollywood, and Hollywood paying me to write the adaptation or whatever. And so these are huge questions that we're wrestling with, and mathematically, it makes a lot more sense for creators to kind of go somewhere else. So that's why you're seeing, Alex DeCampi is set up a lot in Hollywood. I had her on my podcast and we talked about it. And the first couple of times she did it, it was not very lucrative for her, and she did not have a lot of say in where things were going. And she didn't like that. And she writes great books, and
yes, she does.
And now she has asserted control over all of it, and she is better for it, and the product is better for it, and so you're gonna see a lot of us do that, and so I don't know where it's headed, but if we're in this like age of Napster, then you got to look at, well, what is what is iTunes? What is Spotify? What is, all of that stuff. And you saw it happen with music, right? Where it was like, years ago, there were 5 labels that you had to sign with. And if they didn't want to put your record out, you weren't getting on a radio station. Nobody was going to hear your music. You weren't going to get a tour. You weren't going to get, and again, for years, musicians did not make money off of their music, off of their records. They made money touring. They made money selling T-shirts when they hit the road. That was the only way they made a dime. They had to pay for their own videos, right? For their own promotion, for all of that stuff, and they finally said, "Fuck this," right? And so and they're paying for studio time, and they're paying for all that stuff. Now musicians they make their music in a room like this, in their basement, on a 13-inch Mac laptop, and they stick some foam to the wall. And then they release, via Spotify and iTunes, and they're maybe not selling as many. In some cases, they are, but they're making a shit ton more money.
Right.
Again, like I've sold tens of thousands of books in a comic shop, and I have not made a fraction of what I made off of selling, a couple of hundred copies of something on Kickstarter. You know what I'm saying? So the bar that you have to clear is so much lower, and the reward is so much higher.
And the profit margin is higher. No, the music comparison is absolutely apt. Having come from music radio at the beginnings of Napster and seeing not only the music industry from a label standpoint change, but also, as you briefly mentioned, radio. And man, I'll tell you, I worked at for 10 years, WXRT in Chicago, one of the best stations in the country. A station that was not afraid to play new music, and radio had that ability to create hits. But with focus groups, they got so safe and were afraid to break the new bands that they were kind of known for breaking, that all of a sudden the internet ate their lunch, and things like Pitchfork and things like that absolutely changed the business. And again, Napster, and certainly now, why am I blanking? Oh, God damn it. I even have an account with where everybody goes to post their music and everything. SoundCloud.
The SoundCloud, yeah. SoundCloud, Bandcamp, all these things.
Bandcamp, absolutely, yeah. So you're right about it, and that's why I think it's an interesting time. Ed has one more question as we wrap up.
Yeah.
Is there a business model where other streaming platforms would treat comics like content creation, intellectual property development, and enter the marketplace? Maybe. Well, I'll answer the question, and then I want Ryan's point of view. But obviously, I mean, and it helps to have a big name. But look at Mark Miller and Netflix and the deal that he made. And again, having conversations with Mark for years, and I'm like, Mark, you got to get with these streamers. And he's like, movies. And I'm like, okay. And not that I'm sure I wasn't the only person telling him this, but again, Netflix saw Mark's body of work and made him this sweetheart deal that is just incredible. And we're about to finally see the first efforts with Jupiter's Legacy and everything.
Yeah, take this Brinks truck. We're going to back it up for you. I mean, it's a good question, and the comics and film and TV, and particularly the streamers, it's hopelessly intertwined right now. And they know that, and they see that.
Victor Santos got a movie made of his amazing Polar comics. And Remender got one for The Last Days of American Crime. I mean, and of course, Rucka with the Old Guard. I mean, it's hit and miss. And some of those that I've just given out weren't the strongest movies, but it got made. And I mean, I know Greg is over the moon with how well things went with Old Guard. And, he got to write the script. I imagine
that was great.
It was one of the big hits of Netflix as far as independent movies. And I'm sure that sequels are in the works and everything. So, you never.
Well, I mean, Emmy Show Umbrella Academy was I think it was their number 2 rated show last year. I mean, just massive hit. But I as I said, my business for I've been writing in Hollywood for 16 plus years. I think my business for the last 10 has been IP driven. I mean, it was like the writer strike hit right around the time the financial crisis hit. And Hollywood used that as an excuse to kind of remake the way they do movies. But then at that point, the IP revolution was happening. Everything had to be based on something, a book, a comic book, a video game. And I had a few lean years. And then finally, I got smart about it. And I was just like, look, if they want IP, I'm going to give them IP. And so I took this idea that, it used to be you wrote a script. If it was good, it sold. It was just like that. Then that stopped happening. So I knew I was never going to sell this idea as a script or as a pitch. And so I wrote it as a short story. I got the short story pitched, and then I got the short story published. And then overnight, we had a bidding war. We had Justin Lin on one side coming off the Fast 6 opening, which was the largest opening in Universal Summer history, and we had Brett Ratner and Robert De Niro on the other side, and Tyler Perry made an offer, and all of these things. And so
that doesn't suck. Very good.
No, it doesn't suck. And then even then, then like the town didn't understand it yet, and it was like my agents were like, oh well, this was a fluke, and I'm like, it's not a fluke. And I'm going to prove it. And so I went out and I did it like 5 or 6 more times with short stories. And I ended up giving a TED talk on doing it. They called me a disruptor. And now
your TED talk, I'd love to watch it.
Yeah. I'll send you a link. And so now now everybody in Hollywood's doing it. My friend Sean Lewis, who did Bliss for Image and is writing the Superman future state book and all that stuff. He set up like 3 or 4 short stories this year in Hollywood. And so, and so now everyone's doing it. And so I started doing it with comics too. I mean, Aberrant was, you guys mentioned the Aberrant TV series, and that was optioned for TV 2 weeks before the second issue hit comic shops. And that's on track for a TV series, hopefully sooner rather than later, and COVID dependent. But the jump, that hasn't even seen a comic shop. Right after the first issue, hit Kickstarter, WME, William Morris Endeavor, kind of descended upon it, and so they're repping the property, and they're about to take that out. They want to take it out. They want to take it out once we get an announcement on the Diggs thing, because it's going to be, easier to sell it and easier for me to helmet and all that stuff. But hopelessly intertwined, man. And talking about the business model, I mean, Amazon owns Comixology. Amazon, is the second biggest streaming service in the world, and so you're going to see a lot more of that. And IP is definitely the future. And you know what I mean? What you're seeing DC and Marvel move towards. Their comic business, it's sad to a certain degree, but their comic businesses are becoming secondary, and they're not really interested in selling floppies anymore. They're seeing the comics kind of as an IP mine and as something to fuel the
bigger projects.
The streamer content, the movies, the TV, and so everything is breaking in that direction. And so you're seeing a lot of film business people getting excited about comics because of the freedom it does. I mean, again, I can't sell an original idea in Hollywood right now, but I can take my original idea, I can make it into a comic, and then they will option my comic, and they will pay me to write the TV series. So I have to take this kind of this route, and it just so happens that I love comics and I'm pretty good at writing comics, so it suits me. But we're going to be kind of beating these Hollywood people off of the stick in a little bit because everybody's seeing it go that way.
Well, thankfully, people like yourself that truly do like comics can develop an IP and make a good comic. Because again, having done Word Balloon for 15 years, I've seen other publishers that are really IP farms, and the comics suck, and they're really disappointing. And sometimes movies still get made regardless. And I won't name names, but I would say there are movies in the last 20 years that started with lousy comics,
way too many,
became big budget movies and stuff. And then also, like I said, thankfully things like Vic Santos and Polar and things like that, and Rucka with the old guard. So no, absolutely, it's been an interesting change, dude. I hate to do this, but I got things I got to get to, and I know also you got a family, so I'm sure I'm cutting in one more time. But
screaming.
Hey man, that's awesome though, and congratulations, man. The jump looks amazing. There's just under 2 weeks left to support this Kickstarter, and here, I will put the link in the chat. So people can see it. I'm sorry I didn't do it earlier, but here we go.
Yeah, no worries. It's bit.ly/the jump 2 is the easy way to go, or just go to Kickstarter and just search the jump, search my name. It's great. I mean, it's it might be the best thing I've written. So go check it out. It's a badass ride. You're gonna love it.
That's awesome. Oh, and that acknowledges your Golden Girls skateboard, which I think we've talked about before. There it is.
Yeah, it's the star. It's the star of my podcast. It's the star of every podcast I do. It was a Funko San Diego Comic-Con exclusive about 2 years ago, and I had people were knifing each other in alleyways trying to get a hold of them. I have no doubt, absolutely. I had to trade my firstpborn for it. It's beautiful. I'm in love with it, and I'll never give it up for anything.
Excellent. Well, Ryland, whatever the next project is, put out the bat signal and I'll come running. So
rock and roll, and you got to come on the writer's block. I'll talk to
you. My pleasure. If you got room for people that do what I do and stuff, that'd be great. I'd love to do that. So thank you.
Always do, man.
Excellent. All right, everybody. Thank you very much. Ryland Grant, his Kickstarter project, The Jump, issue 2. But thankfully, if you're behind, there are tiers where you could buy both of the first 2 issues and 5 issues. Right? Well, how long do you think the series will go?
It's one of these things. It's like the first
ongoing in your video.
Yeah. The first story arc will be 4 issues, but then we'll go from there. I mean, it's probably after we kickstart the first 4, then we'll go the traditional publishing route. We'll see what Image has to say about it, and then we'll try to get it in a comic shop somewhere. So,
congratulations, man! No, and continued success. And Rise already reached their goal, but there's still time to kind of with the stretch goals. Get more bells and whistles, get more people involved.
Building out the experience. So we're about to hit the 13K stretch goal, and then we get 3 more additions to the Ryland Grantverse card set, which is fucking amazing. So go check that out.
That's excellent, man. It's gonna be a fun week on Word Balloon. Kurt Pyers, another great independent writer and artist, is going to join us tomorrow. And right now, I don't have my schedule in front of me, but I know I've got stuff set up for Wednesday and I believe Thursday and Friday. So join us this week for more conversations. I hope everybody enjoyed the discussion today. Until then,